I call to order the school committee meeting of Monday, November 1st, 2021. We're early tonight at 5:30 because first order of business is to enter into executive session. And then we'll come back out of executive session and we will handle our regular order of business. First, consideration to enter into executive session pursuant to Chapter 30A, Section 21A3, to discuss strategy for a negotiation of a personal service contract and collective bargaining, as an open meeting may have a detrimental effect on the legal position of the school committee as declared by the chair. I will need a motion to enter into executive session.
So moved.
Do I have a second? Okay. We'll have a roll call vote. Obviously, Mr. Mayor will be late, but he'll join us momentarily. Ms. Saros?
Aye.
Ms. Lemaire?
Aye.
Ms. Dolan?
Aye.
Mr. Kokoris?
Aye.
Mr. Chafe?
Aye.
The chair votes aye. We'll be right back after we're done with our executive session. Thank you, people, for your patience.
Social Security is with you through life's journey from birth to retirement. As your life changes year to year, so do your needs. For over 80 years, Social Security has helped to meet your needs and is committed to improving access to the services that make a difference in your life. Today, you can verify your earnings, estimate your future benefits, apply for retirement, manage your benefits, and even change your address, all from the comfort of your home. Social Security's online services help put you in control with secure access to your information anytime, anywhere, allowing you to spend more time with family, friends, or simply just enjoying the day. Social Security, securing today and tomorrow. See what you can do online at socialsecurity.gov.
Produced at U.S. taxpayer expense.
Meet James. He just got his yearly checkup and he's in pretty good health. Except his blood pressure was elevated, about 128/82, which means he's at risk for high blood pressure, also called hypertension. This was serious. High blood pressure can lead to heart attack, stroke, or even heart disease. James was totally shocked. I'm only 43, he thought, and I feel great. But his doctor had good news too. There are steps he could take to get those numbers in control and even lower them. His healthy path started with getting his blood pressure checked regularly. Next, one of the most important steps he took was quitting smoking. Smoking increases blood pressure and the risk for heart attack and stroke, and quitting could lower his blood pressure very quickly. So after several tries and with a combination of medication and coaching through the helpline, he was able to ditch the habit. James also worked on cutting down on salt. He learned that the problem wasn't just adding salt to his food. High amounts of salt or sodium is hiding in foods like cheese, deli meat, frozen meals, and canned soup or vegetables. Now he double-checks the sodium on food labels. James and his provider also talked about what to eat more of and less of. More fruits, vegetables, whole grains, fish, lean poultry, and low-fat dairy. And less red meat. Too much alcohol can also raise blood pressure. So James talked to his doctor about what was healthy for him. More exercise was also an important step on his path. He didn't want to join a gym, so instead he added a 30-minute walk to his routine 5 days a week to strengthen his heart and keep a healthy weight. Getting on this healthy path hasn't been easy, but it's made a big difference in his blood pressure and helped lower his risk for heart problems down the line. James now knows it's never too soon to think about his blood pressure numbers. Learn more at mass.gov/blood pressure.
We're back live. We need a motion to come out of executive session.
So moved.
I get a second? Okay. Roll call vote. Mr. Mayor. Aye. Ms. Saros.
Aye.
Ms. Cobb-Lemaire.
Aye.
Ms. Dolan.
Aye.
Mr. Kokoris. George,
Aye.
you with us?
I'm here.
Okay, you're an aye. Mr. Chafe?
Aye.
And the chairman votes aye. We're back in session. Okay, first order of business will be the approval of the minutes of the open session and executive session of October 4th, 2021.
So moved. Second.
And a second, okay. Yeah, we have to do the roll call because he's in the other room. Okay. Approval of said minutes as written. Mr. Mayor?
Aye.
Ms. Saros?
Abstain.
Same. Ms. Cobbler-Mayor?
Aye.
Ms. Doland?
Aye.
Mr. Kokoris?
Aye.
Mr. Chafe?
Aye.
The chair votes aye. Okay, that passes. Communications and accommodations.
Ladies and gentlemen, thank you very much. Ladies and gentlemen, in your packets, you'll find a copy of an email and some information regarding a new scholarship that's going to be offered this year in the name of Marty McPherson. A committee full of Braintree alum have formed and have created a scholarship. They're beginning their fundraising efforts. For those of you, and many of you do, or knew Marty, Marty passed away on April 23rd, 2021. He was a staple in the Braintree public school system and in all the athletic fields, and well missed by so many people in town. So under the guidance of a committee, again, to set up a scholarship, they'll be taking donations through South Shore Bank on Washington Street here in Braintree, with the hope of an annual scholarship to be given away to deserving seniors moving forward every single year. So I just want to make everybody aware of that. Other update is from the South Shore Educational Collaborative, which recently had its meeting, bringing everybody back up to speed in terms of where they were. Like most people, they had a difficult time during the pandemic. As a result, although their budget seems to be in decent shape, they've put off retirement contributions for the short term to make sure that they can balance their own budget. And the executive director's evaluation was completed during that meeting. So the South Shore Collaborative, again, serving many of our students who require that level of service. Excellent resource for the district, but obviously moving ahead this year as a week. Thank you, Mr. Devon.
All right, thank you. Moving on to C, which is gifts to schools. We will entertain motions to accept in seconds, and we'll vote roll call at the very end for all three, if everyone's in agreement. First, in order is gift to schools from Bay State Textiles, totaling $206.50, 5 different checks, and they total to $206.50. Do I have a motion to accept?
So moved.
Do I have a second? Okay. Our second is our Super Saturdays Board of Directors gift to schools totaling $40,000. That's right, $40,000. I note this gift was presented to the October 4th meeting of the school committee, but has not been was not voted on by said school committee. So tonight's our night to do that. Do I have a motion to accept?
So moved.
Second.
Motion and a second. Okay. And our last is Manakwit School Kindergarten Center gifts to school totaling $640.00. Cash amount of $425 and checks in the amount of $215 with a total of $640.00 from the MSKC Center. Street sign raffle to be used at Manakwit School and the Kindergarten Center. Do we have a motion to accept?
So moved.
A second? Okay. Roll call vote to accept said gifts to school. Mr. Mayor?
Aye.
Ms. Saros?
Aye.
Ms. Cobbler-Mayor?
Aye.
Ms. Doland?
Aye.
Mr. Kokoris?
Aye.
Mr. Chafe?
Aye.
The chair votes aye. We accept that graciously, and thank you very much for all that have helped us going forward. From C, we go to D, which is trip approvals.
Thank you again, Mr. Devon. In your packets, as we return much more to a normal school year, we have a couple trip requests, very similar to those that you've seen in the past. The first are a group of elementary schools that wish to attend the Providence Bruins game on November 19th, December 3rd, December 10th. Students from Highlands, Morrison, and Flaherty. As you may recall from past years, they go, this is under the direction of Lisa Herman and Tiffany McCauley, our music teachers. They go down, they sing the Star Spangled Banner, they sing God Bless America, and they stay for the game. So we're looking for approval on that trip. The second trip is also music driven by Michael Coronella at the middle school level. And this is East and South Middle School Trills and Thrills Music Festival, which happens in June. As you may recall, again, this is a trip we've done in the past. They go out or up to Nashua, they perform, and then at the end of the performance, they go to Canopy Lake Park on the way home. So looking for approval for both sets of trips. Again, these are trips that we have taken in the past, been very successful for us as a district.
How does the the committee feel about approving said trips? I'll entertain a motion to approve. All right, we have a motion and a second. Roll call vote to approve said trips. Mr. Mayor?
Aye.
Ms. Saros?
Aye.
Ms. Cobbler?
Aye.
Ms. Doland?
Aye.
Mr. Kokoris?
Aye.
Mr. Chafe?
Aye.
And chair votes aye. I hope they have a great time. Look forward to getting back to something that resembles normalcy.
More and more so. Thank you very much. So this evening, from the superintendent and staff, sorry to jump ahead, sir.
No worries.
We have the presentations of our school and department improvement plans. As you know, and as you may recall, in a normal year, we would come around this time of year and present to all of you our improvement plans for each level within the district, elementary, middle, and high, and also what our directors and their departments are working on as well. As you again may recall, these are all goals and objectives that align with our strategic plan. Our strategic plan was scheduled to end at the end of this year, but due to the pandemic, I am recommending that we extend it one more year to give us the appropriate amount of time to do the work that is in the strategic plan. That said, principals and directors have still been at work, principals with their school councils to formulate the improvement plans that you're going to see tonight. So, Mr. Devon, with your indulgence, I'd like to bring up level by level to have an overview provided to you by the principals.
Please do. That would be great.
So elementary, I think it's Ms. Soto and Ms. Day.
Not sure if we'd be first or last.
You're always first in my mind.
Yeah, what's that?
Thanks so much.
I have to say that because you did that.
Okay, so for our action plans, all the levels have the same objectives. So the first one focuses on curriculum instruction and assessment. You're gonna show it?
I'm trying. Hold on one second. It's showing on my screen.
It's because he had it listed last. I don't know why.
Throw me under the bus.
I can just read the objective while you have it.
Throwing under the bus, that's under something else, right?
Want me just to read the objective?
I'm coming. Slowly but surely.
We're getting there. There we
I'm
go.
here.
Come on.
Apologies.
So the first objective is number 1.3. You can see it on the left-hand column. It's about curriculum and instruction and assessment. And our action plan on the elementary level is to continue to analyze data, especially this year, to really look at where kids are, where they need backfill, what's going on with their instructions, and helping teachers to analyze that data. And from there, making decisions based on each individual student and where they are. The key to it is flexibility. The groups have to be flexible. The teachers have to be flexible, which they're already showing tremendous amount of flexibility to ensure that all academic growth for all children, whether they're at, below, or above grade level or above expectations. So the key is you might be really struggling in one area in reading, but then you have an understanding of another one, so you don't need that same grouping. So the groups are flexible, as well as the number of kids in the groups and the teachers instructing it. So the small group instruction, that's the key for that, as well as really targeting phonemic awareness in the younger grades. We're finding that that's the biggest area that we have need right now, is to make sure that kindergarten, first grade, second grade really target that phonemic awareness. In third grade, who might not have had to in the past, might need to really target it as well. And through that, we're using a variety of things, kind of foundations, Hegarty, Intellian, which are programs that they can use. So there's consistency in the language, whether they're in the teacher or in their small groups, or they're working with a reading specialist or with a special educator. It's all the same language across the district, across the school. And then in the far column, we have some evidence and metrics. Well, since there are 7 of us, we all do a little bit different things depending upon our building, our space, and all that. So the list is suggestions of what they do in some of the schools. Not every school does all of them, but their ideas of, using the DIBELS, which is an early literacy screener, to determine data as well, to see where kids need backfill or where they need to be enhanced in their instruction, as well as then bringing up CCT or data team meetings, which is meetings where you get together and you discuss student needs, you plan interventions, and then you meet 6 to 8 weeks later to discuss if the interventions are being successful or if you need to change something up. Again, the flexibility is the key. We also have the different data that we get from math and from reading in the whole district, the NWEA, or also the STAR assessment. We also have Like I said, the phonics instruction, which is across the board now, which is really, really promoted a lot in the younger grades. And in-class support, we have a lot with the workshop model because we're doing it in writing and math across elementary, and now we're piloting reading. And some people are dabbling in it. Some people are actually doing the early beginning part of it. And we also have for support, we also have Second Step, which is now going to be piloting the Trails program. Some volunteers are using that. We use the DCAP to make sure that the tier 1 level instruction in the classroom is being differentiated and meeting all the kids' needs, as well as we offered the Early Literacy Accelerated Academy at the beginning of the year, which was for 1 full week where the kids did reading all day long. And that was a really great promoter. And I loved the timing of it in August because it was right before school started. So the kids came back, they got that jump start, and then they got ready to come right back into school. And they also offered some extra help over the SPARK program. So all of those evidence, it's not every single school doesn't do every single one, but you'll find them a variety in all the different buildings. So that's for the curriculum instruction and assessment part.
Our BPS objective number 2 is on effective family and community engagement. One of our first action steps is always to foster home school partnerships and improve communication strategies to create a safe and inclusive school community. I think that the pandemic, in the beginning, the communication was the key. It was really hard to get parents online. It was really hard to get teachers who had in elementary who had to use some of the online resources. But I think we find ourselves a year and a half later in a really great position. Teachers are using Parent Square as evidence. They're doing individual messages from teacher to parent. Hey, I'm going to pull your daughter into my instruction group. Here's what we're going to work on. And it translates, the Parent Square translates with parents so that we really feel like we're getting all of the families so that they are up to date on what's happening, and they can also ask us questions and get up to date with us. Providing opportunities, we've learned now to do in-person and virtual, so parent conferences is a perfect example of that. We gave teachers and parents an 8-week window to figure out what works for them. So some did on-site, very traditional in-person, and some were able to work something out before school, after school, or during a lunch break. So that over that time, every teacher had a chance to talk to every family. And they do it comfortably. You know, people aren't nervous now to set up a meeting up like that. Utilizing forms for families to gather feedback. We do a lot of surveys as a district and then throughout our schools. But we do find that we do get a good response, definitely a good sampling of our families. And we have very much been exploring ways to increase our interpreter services at school events. So Parent Square is great because it can automatically translate for them. I know some of us have worked with our PTOs and have them send us Word documents so we can send that information out as well. Teachers are much more comfortable using the phone system, the phone interpreter, which is really very easy. So that if I need to talk to someone in the next 10 minutes, I can get somebody on the phone, have that meeting, or we can even do a Google Meet with the phone interpreter. So we've really, I think, come a long way in trying to make sure all of our families are heard and that we get to speak with them. Some of the other evidence would be family and community activities. Now that we're back to school, things are starting to feel a little more normal. There's been math nights, literacy nights. Typically, there's an EL Title I night. So events like that happen after school and that bring families in with their children and with staff. And I think schools are looking forward to bringing back more of that. School advisory councils share successful initiatives. So we have families that are part of all of our conversations about changes that we make in the school. PTO meetings try a bunch of different ways to get more families. Some are streaming their PTO meetings, so as we learned that during the pandemic. Some are having morning coffee chats. Some do morning and afternoon flip off so that they can find the right time for families to be able to come to school and to be part of the PTO. And then as a district, and I think certainly as elementary, we're certainly increasing our online resources and forms for families, sending a lot of links home. The music teachers now can send home a link about the PJ party on Wednesday, music party. And so they're getting it from the music teacher, and then their classroom teacher might remind them. And there's ways for families to kind of find out what's happening this week at school and feel more like them. So I think it's definitely an area that we always want to continue to foster and do better at, but I think we've come a long way in the last year and a half.
Great. And then standard 3 is, again, back to curriculum and culture of learning and innovation. And at the elementary level, this really focuses on a workshop style of teaching. The workshop style of teaching promotes a lot of problem solving, collaboration. It's not just the teacher telling the children the answer, it's the teachers giving them a scenario, and then they can work from the floor up as high as they can go, as remedial as they need, whatever they need. The instructional level meets needs of all kids. And the workshop style, it's great because kids get a chance to talk to each other again and to figure things out again, which is a skill that many of them in grade 2 haven't had the opportunity to do yet. So it really practices that socializing time as well with the product in mind. Right now, as I said, writing and math is being implemented in all the grades, and reading workshop is beginning now, and there's going to be a lot of PD on that as well for the teachers. But again, it promotes thinking creatively, critically, out of the box, and then also the most important part is learning how to explain your thinking and what you came up with. Because sometimes kids just say, I just knew the answer, I just knew it. So it's really teaching them how to work together and explain their answer to a partner, and the partner explains it to them. They might have solved this the same way, they might have solved it a different way. And that will be monitored through principals, observations, both formal and informal, through peer observations. They really love to see each other. We have the best teachers to learn from, so why do anything different than go and see your peers? And as well as we're organizing walkthroughs, which I know they've already had in the secondary level, and the elementary level is coming up this month. So walkthroughs with the administrative staff to promote and just share best practices and what you're seeing. And then again, from the workshop model, analyzing data, which is crucial and key. And the nice part about it too is that you can have the math specialist or the reading specialist push in and help right there in the classroom with everybody by going to different groups and seeing what everyone's doing, and then give some feedback to the teacher as well. So it really becomes a collaborative, not just with the kids, but also with the staff. And across all areas, because they're really doing it now almost the entire day.
Goal area number 4 is on wellness, and DPS objective 4.2 is about preparing administrators and school personnel to effectively work with students who require support with personal, social, and/or emotional issues. And today we believe that's all of our students, because they're living in a pandemic. They've come back, it's been 8 weeks of full day for some students for the first time, 5 days a week. And for a lot of other students, we realized our 4th graders hadn't been in school for a full year since 1st grade. So we're treating all of our students like they all have social emotional needs right now. We're building on relationships, which is the district's theme, rebuilding trust, safety, and as Stacey mentioned, through the curriculum, finding out where are the gaps, what can we do to help build and move forward. Our principals, we all support the building-based wellness team. We still miss cupcakes, but other than that, we're very supportive of the wellness team. And I think that the teams themselves have certainly in the last few years really become a real staple in the building. We're doing a mental health screener this year in grade 4 at the elementary level, which will have an opportunity for students to answer some questions. And if some of their answers are flagged, that maybe they're struggling a little bit more than we realize, there's some mental health counselors on site to help with that, including our own school psychologists and guidance counselors. And then that could in turn turn to referrals to therapy and outside sources. This is the first year we're doing that. We also have a partnership with Gosno to provide counseling for students in school. I know we've had a partnership with Gosno for a little while, but this is the first time all the elementary schools are going to have that opportunity. So a family who maybe can't get their child to a therapist or find a therapist, which is very hard to do, they are able to see that therapist on site through a connection with Braintree Public Schools. We're certainly supporting staff who are investigating the trails, transforming research into action to improve the lives of students. Our program and incorporating that with our second step program. Everyone's very excited in the school psychologist lifestyle. They are very happy with the trails program that they're learning about. Many teachers are able to take it too. It was like a 2-hour training that he went through, and then it opened up all of these social emotional type lessons to run with students and activities. And so everyone's going to be at different places, but we're all going to try it and see what works and come together at the end of the year and see where we want to go next with it. But it's a great program that we were very happy to get training on this year. In the principals, all the administrators, we want to build empathy and responsibility. So we're going to be reading parts of the book, Hacking School Discipline, 9 Ways to Create a Culture of Empathy and Responsibility Using Restorative Justice. The goal is to keep students in class. Sometimes there's an incident at recess, you have to talk to the child and you have to pull someone else out. You don't realize how much time has gone by and the student missed the math lesson. So looking at ways to address stuff, maybe it's a 10-minute class circle time. Let's talk about what just happened. kids come in a little bit mad that this team beat this team at Gaga Pit, and it needs to be talked out. And if you just take those 5 or 10 minutes, you really get a lot further with them in the classroom. So it's talking about ways to give students a voice, give them time to digest possibly what their behavior may have done to others. How can they accept that responsibility, build better habits, and make amends? So it's an interesting book. It shows you here's what can go wrong, and here's here's what popular opinion says. But it lends itself to some great conversations that the administrators will be having.
And last but not least, we have one more section that's ad lib.
Oh, you do. I'm excited for that one.
Our ad lib section is that we just want to acknowledge as elementary principal our thank and appreciation for working with Nancy Pelletier for so long. She said, no, I can't believe it. We respected that, but it's been wonderful. I've been here 8 years and just being with Nancy and learning so much from you, so thank you, Nancy. And since we had the floor, we wanted to just throw that out. We're gonna miss you and that we love you. So, thank you for everything you've done.
Questions?
Any questions from the committee? Students? Anything?
Thank you.
Comments?
Through the chair.
Great. By all means.
Dr. Pelletier, 8 years at Highlands. We will miss you. Thank you for all that you've done, and we wish you the best. Retirement.
Thank you so much. Not too many people can say that they have absolutely enjoyed and loved their career. I want to
Good. Okay.
Thank you. Next one.
Next would be middle schools.
Next will be middle schools. Second. And we have Mr. Rainey from South and Mr. Shan from East. Tough act to follow, but here we go.
Like a jamboree, huh?
Yeah.
Right, get the whole party for you.
Before Mr. Rainey begins, he's going to introduce the first part. Ms. Fay mentioned cupcakes. I'd like to promote our East PTO bake sale tomorrow. Anybody's out there coming to vote, stop by and pick up some goodies and support the East PTO. Over to you.
All right. Here.
So I won't repeat all of the overarching goals. They were the same for each level, and then try to adapt them to the right, to the various age levels and developmental levels of the students. But looking at curriculum instruction and assessment, we were particularly focused on identifying students who need specialized supports and how to meet their needs in the least restrictive environment. Part of the joy of the return to school, to in-person schooling for all students, has been the effort to restore that sense of community and that everyone belongs at middle school, right? And so we've been working with teachers on how to identify in a very specific way if there are gaps that students have, as opposed to looking at holistic needs. If we can identify specific gaps and address those in a more targeted way, it makes it easier to keep students in the classroom. I believe this committee heard a presentation earlier about acceleration versus remediation. And so we've been working with teachers about what exactly does that look like in the classroom, rather than focusing on earlier grade level material and trying to teach that, but really looking at how do you teach your grade level in a way that has more supports ready to go as needed to move forward. And I do think teachers are finding that they're moving through the curriculum a little bit more slowly than they would otherwise have done, but they are feeling like they're making good progress in that way and using diagnostic tests to kick off and see where are kids right now, and then using formative tests throughout it, and even just casual check-ins of the classes to figure out, did that lesson land? Did they actually produce knowledge out of that instruction? And when the answer is yes, you move forward. So we've really been focusing on that as groups, and then within departments, especially tomorrow, we're going to start looking at the DCAP, which is the Curriculum Accommodation Plan, and trying to figure out what tools are available to us already in the district that are already identified as meeting specific needs, but then also what other areas we could fill in with additional supports or practices that are happening in some classrooms under some teachers that could be more generally applied into various classrooms. What am I missing?
No, I think that's great. I would just like to jump on the DCAP a little bit. the district curriculum accommodation plan, because Ms. Soto mentioned it as well. It's really important to us this year, coming out of COVID, and where there are kids with some real gaps in their learning, really struggled. So as we accelerate and try to keep the curriculum on pace, we need to make sure that we're employing strategies that will help kids get to that pace, right? So that we don't get to this place where we're saying, oh, these kids don't know this, they can't learn this, therefore let's walk down the special education route. These kids, these students are not all special education students because they have gaps in their learning. So we need to make sure that we're using these strategies in the classroom. All teachers are employing this to really be mindful of getting kids to where they are, using the scaffolding so that we're not stuck in this glut of let's test all these kids to make sure they're not learning this. These kids aren't learning disabled. They're behind a bit, but we're going to get them to where they need to be with these strategies. So I just wanted to jump on the details. Thanks. Goal area 2 was this culture of learning and innovation. And a lot of this centers on making sure that we're communicating with parents, like the DCAP, using Parent Square to make sure that we're giving parents relevant, timely information to help us guide the students, to help us to stay on track with learning. And also make sure we're employing these best practices to build community and foster collaboration with the families. Back to school night, parent-teacher conferences, curriculum-related events, all things that are coming back to East Middle School. And you think about the things that we missed over the last 18 months that were a struggle for us. But what we've done, though, as well, is we found some areas to innovate, such as parent-teacher conferences. You'll see both East, South, and the elementary schools, and I'm sure the high school as well, employing the use of Parent Square and Google Meet so that parents don't have to come into the school. I know with two of my 4 kids, it was great to be able to sit down at home and have a parent-teacher conference with their teachers. So we're employing some methods that we used throughout COVID to use now coming back from COVID. And it's been a really great way to keep connected with our families. Another action plan that we talked about is a kind of a continuation from the last couple of years, but a very important one is the district-wide and site-based DEI committees, continuing to examine practices to ensure an affirming, welcoming stance to all members of the community. Both East and South and all of our schools have site-based DEI committees, which are very active and very strong. And this month we're celebrating Native American Heritage Month. Last month was Latin American Month. We're going to continue on welcoming, affirming, accepting all identities, all differences that we have, and make sure that parents feel welcome at East Middle School, at South Middle School, and all the schools in Braintree. That's community engagement, family engagement. Family.
All right. So for the third goal area, the culture of learning and innovation, we're talking about creativity, critical thinking, and problem-solving skills, but basically focusing on developing the 21st century skills for our students, helping them to become stronger thinkers, not just, the ability to regurgitate information that's been provided, but to make it their own and apply it to their lives in different ways. So I know in the last presentation, Ms. Fay was talking about hacking school discipline, and some of the strategies that we're trying to get students to use their voices with one another. And I think that applies in this too, where we're having teachers work with students about using their own voice in the classroom as a way to reflect on what they're learning, make connections between curriculum areas, and also to build that community for themselves. As they get older, it's not just a matter of the teachers sort of, designing activities, but also having students engage in that, and to be able to carry that onto the hallways and the lunchroom and after school activities. So we're working a lot on developing those social emotional learning lessons, applying them right into the classroom. So it's not taking away from, there's plenty of learning that needs to happen, but trying to use that time more efficiently to have students go a little bit beyond the curriculum and, sharing with one another, collaborating that way, which are definitely going to be skills that they'll use beyond school. Also, as we talk about making sure that all students are learning, it's not just a matter of making sure that nobody's left behind, but also pushing students that did get the curriculum in the early lessons to be able to make more out of that. We want to make sure that all students are learning. So we're working with teachers about pursuing enrichment opportunities. One of the greatest ways to do that, especially at the middle school level, where we take the team approach, and it's easy to have teachers working with those in other departments, is to have students making connections between curriculum areas and trying to look for projects that would move between, not just an English project, but one that ties in art or ties in other areas that might be engaging to students who sometimes get turned off by the concept of sitting in the classroom. But to be able to get more hands-on projects, more talking with one another and moving forward in their understanding that way.
And finally, goal area 4, which I believe we all think is probably the most important goal this year, and that's the goal of wellness for our students. Social emotional learning, relationships with students, really coming out of this this COVID struggle we've had, implementing professional development to meet the needs of faculty relative to SEI, strengthening student, staff, and family relationships, both East and South. In our last professional development day, did lessons or did workshops on relationships, on social emotional learning. It's really going to be at the forefront. I think it was Ms. Miller who said relationships above everything, right? From our last PD. I think our teachers are really embracing that this year. And while we know kids are there to learn, and we're gonna hone in on the curriculum, we want to make sure kids feel safe and kids are ready to come back to school. We're going to continue to develop our grade level wellness competencies, emotional regulation, social development, responsible decision-making skills through a number of methods. We're going to continue to strengthen our partnerships in the community, school resource officers, and other resources that we have, including Gosnold, which Ms. Soto mentioned. To be real here, some of our kids are struggling. There's a lot of trauma throughout COVID, and we need to make sure that we have the resources in place to assist. And that's what we're trying to do, not only at the school, but with the community as well. So that's a really important goal of ours this year. And that is what we have.
That's the middle school.
Questions, sir?
Any questions, comments from the committee?
I have a question. The Gosnold, do they come to the school and give counseling to the students, and do they include the families in that, or is it outside of the school, or how does that work?
Yeah, it's a outside agency that partners with the schools, so they will actually give counseling to our students at East Middle School. We have at least at East, we have a room, office that the Gosnold counselor will use. I think it's once a week that we're employing Gosnold now, and we used them in the past. They're very good. But yeah, it's a great resource for us.
Are we able to get to every family and every student that needs it, or?
I don't think we have them as much as we'd like them, because there are a lot of families that could use some support this year.
Right.
But right now, we'll take what we can get.
Right.
So Gosnold is very focused on a limited number of students, but we're also trying to bring in other outside groups to talk with to address more general levels of need. So we started the mental health screener at the middle school level. We did South the other day. I know East is coming up, and we're using that to identify groups of students who have elevated levels of anxiety, and then trying to work through the data to identify if there's common causes, and what are the best strategies to address that. They're going to be a lunch group where we talk about coping strategies and managing academic stress. But then for some students, if they need more individualized support, that's when Gosnold would be involved. Anxiety is one category we're looking at. Depression and PTSD is the third. And so our guidance staff is very experienced and is going to be our main way of addressing a lot of needs in that way, sometimes with groups, sometimes with small groups, sometimes with individuals. And then employing Gosnold. We also have good relationships with the Quincy Family Resource Center and other community sources like that we can really bring to bear to help say to families, we've identified this need. I think what we're finding so far is a lot of families are saying, yeah, I know something's up. And then saying, okay, well, the school's here to help you get in touch with people. We can't provide every answer, but we can help you get in touch with people, and we can support that in whatever way we can. And I know what John and I have talked about in the past, we love about Gosnell is to be able to provide a time during the day when a student who might have a hard time making an appointment on a weekly basis or on a regular basis can have that need met. And it's just a nice support to be able to provide that.
I don't know if you're aware, but to find a counselor, to find some therapeutic services for families, there's a long waiting list.
No, that's what I was gonna say. That it's hard to get it, even if you have insurance or you have a doctor, a pediatrician. It's hard to get on so much of these services are needed everywhere. Yeah, so I appreciate that.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Any other comments, questions from the school committee? Gentlemen, thank you very much.
Thank you.
Appreciate
you guys.
your time.
Thank you.
I'm gonna go out on a limb and say the high school's next.
Maybe like that, I'm moving around.
Oh.
Maybe that was a safe bet that the high school was.
How are you, sir? Great to see you.
Wonderful to be back.
Second, Mrs. Scully, Dr. Scully, excuse me. Dr. Scully.
Here we are. You've heard about these various objective areas, and so I'm going to try and summarize a little bit of what we're doing at the high school. The BHS School Council met at its October meeting to review and approve this improvement plan. I'll talk about a few of the action steps in each area, and then I'm happy to answer questions on any of the other ones that we don't get to. Under the first objective, which is really about, it's really curricular based and thinking about what we're offering. I'll draw your attention to action step number 2, which is to expand business offerings by including all 12th graders in Credit for Life and by starting a Braintree High School DECA chapter. Some of this is carried over, and it's really a reminder of where we were when that pandemic hit. In fact, I think Credit for Life was a week away, perhaps?
Half a week?
Half a week away when everything stopped in March. So those who are familiar with the program were able to, at the time, or formerly, bring together some 12th grade students, basically have them do a simulation of what putting together a living budget would be, for lack of a better term. And what we were about to do previously was expand that out to the entire 12th grade, so that all students would have that experience of going through that process of saying, okay, here's the salary, here are my expenses, how do I put this together? Inevitably having to make some difficult decisions about what they can and can't do. And through Ms. Miller and a committee, we were able to sort of put together a plan, like I said, to have everybody sort of offer some additional programming as part of that. So we're revisiting that, we're coming back to that. That'll take place in the spring. We're bringing that committee back together and taking a look at it. DECA is also something that we're hoping to get off the ground this year. That's why it's here as a goal. We were able to think about it a little bit pre-pandemic, but it's distributive education. It's basically a program to introduce students to broadly writ marketing skills. And so thinking about business, thinking about everything that goes into business, from the initial pitch to sort of selling a product. It's an after-school activity, but it's popular at a number of high schools, so we are working on bringing that to BHS during this school year. And the other one under this section I want to talk about was number 3, plan and design a BHS internship program to be implemented in the following school year. So it sounds a little counterintuitive, but I feel like one of the things that we could do at Braintree High to improve our students' experiences, to get them out of Braintree High. We do a really good job through decades of working at a curriculum. It's really a K-12 curriculum. Our students achieve at a significantly high level. I think what we can add to their experience is finding ways for students who are ready to get out of the building, to experience particularly here, an internship, get further experience. We're also running we're working with representatives from the trades and running a career fair later this year. And so we're thinking about opportunities like that. This particular program, we have a grant from the South Shore Workforce Board, and we're going to be able to do some planning this year. It's difficult to do because it takes a lot of setup in advance. We're looking to attract students, but also we're looking to attract meaningful host sites for those students. So that's some of the work that we're going to be putting together this year. And again, that's to extend what our students are learning from the classroom out into the world, particularly as we get to 11th and 12th graders. This is where they're thinking about what comes next. The second objective area is about family and community engagement. Just talk about a couple here. The first one, number 2, as a school, we have implemented regular Friday updates just to keep people posted about what's going on in the school community. There's a lot. There's no way that 3 or 4 items can really express everything that goes on in the high school. And many aspects of the school are using Parent Square regularly. Everything from the athletics department to individual teachers to clubs and activities. What we're trying to do with the Friday update is bring together a little bit of good news, some of the things that have been going on at the high school, along with important facts or things that the entire school community needs to know. If it's something about a different traffic pattern, we want to let everybody know at the same time. Items like that. And so we're bringing that together with the help of different departments, the assistant principals, different clubs and activities who all contribute to that on a weekly basis. Along those lines, and the students will recognize this is a regular part of our day. Number 6, we've been implementing a weekly Braintree 4 broadcast through the broadcasting program. This is something that we started last year on a slightly smaller format. We had a Wednesday all the way back. It feels like this was 10 years ago, but we had a different schedule. Wednesday, we followed a different schedule. We had an advisory meeting every Wednesday. Sometimes we had a lesson for it. Sometimes it was just a check-in. But we started to distribute our announcements through a short broadcast. So this is Mr. Nellis, who runs a number of broadcasting programs. And so far this year, every Wednesday, they've put together a short telecast. I made it sound like it's 1963, but you can find on there's everything from basic announcements, but there's also usually a few highlights. So they can highlight something that's going on in the school. They've been able to do this really just take it from an idea, and it happens regularly now. So I think it's something that we can definitely build on. It's also a way to communicate with students very directly. It's an engaging way. Rather than listening to me read off 5, 6, 7 announcements, they can watch a peer, they can get a point of interest, and it's something we want to build on as well. The third area was thinking about creativity, critical thinking, problem solving in our academic instruction. There's a number of items here that we've been working on, and I think, as you've heard from everybody, part of what we're doing is really sort of where our students are at after the last year and a half and where we want them to go. And so there's some constant reassessment of what's necessary at the current moment. The 2 that I'll highlight, number 3, explore incorporating Project Lead the Way into our engineering courses. We currently have 2 engineering electives, or we have an engineering elective that runs for 2 sections. And Dr. Clifford, the director of the science department, is looking at and working with the high school, thinking about it's an outside group, I suppose. It's outside curriculum, really, that talks about design thinking and how to incorporate that into our engineering classes. So this is called Project Lead the Way. It's a popular course. We want to see how we can make sure that it gets students not just specific knowledge about some of the problems they're talking about, but really grounds them in that iterative design thinking process. Try something, you try to put it into play. If it doesn't work, what are you going back and thinking about it? That's something that we are looking into building into those courses. And then the other one that I would bring your attention to would be number 5. And I've called this, and perhaps Ms. Miller can correct me if I have the language wrong, but piloting a new experiential focus for geometry courses. So the geometry teachers started working over the summer, is that fair to say? And they're trying to think about I'm going to be very careful on how I describe math. Sort of everybody's math experience is not the same. And I think it's one of those few areas where, we sort of allow ourselves to say, oh, I'm not good at math. And we would never let ourselves say, oh, I'm not good at reading, because we view it as essential. So we want to make sure that all students are connected to their experience in math, that they have, they not only get the skills that are necessary, but also that they are continually engaged as they go through. I've left out some specifics. Anything further on that I should add?
Yeah, I would add that it is a problem-based curriculum. So I know as a district, we've been talking a lot about student-centered learning, even starting with the elementary presentation about workshop structure and really making sure that the kids are the ones that are actively engaged. And this is just a great example of how that curriculum is moving up all the way through our middle schools and high school.
And it's really,
highlighting that.
To hear that phrase, it's, workshop, problem-based, it really does take you back to a lot of what we're doing this year is sort of blowing the dust off things and saying, okay, what were those main goals that we had before we all had to think about something else? And this is one that we're trying to revisit as well. The last category, and I think you heard from the middle school presentation, this is really probably the most important this year, is we're really thinking about students who are experiencing personal, social, or emotional issues that prevent them from gaining the type of success that they, their families, and we as a school district are really looking for. There's a number of initiatives here. I've only put a few in the plan. I'm going to highlight a couple. The first one, just because it happens tomorrow, is that not just our assistant principals, a number of people in the district will be attending a Norfolk County Drug Awareness training tomorrow as part of our Professional Development Day. We know that in times of stress, in times of crisis, that substance use tends to spike, and so we're trying to make sure that we are keeping up with what's happening out there. Number two, we're looking into and we're working with the Special Services Department to pilot module-based credit recovery opportunities through the PM program. So at the high school, we have a very successful PM instruction program that is a great way for students for whom regular track is not working. It's a different track. It allows, again, some incorporation of some career-based work. It allows some really specialized instruction, some smaller groups. But one thing that we want to look at as well is that we don't want to necessarily say, hey, here's another route for you, but it's only going to be one size fits all right there as well. So this is an idea that came from the teachers of that program, and they're trying to think about how to gain the flexibility to specifically tailor instruction and opportunities for students who have very individualized needs. And then number four, the only other one that I would mention here would be to continue to support the growth of our Student Diversity Council. This group started, again, pre-pandemic. It's a number of students from all sorts of different aspects of the high school who come together specifically, one, to learn, but then also to think about how to be leaders on issues of diversity, how to make sure that we continue to become a more and more welcoming community at Braintree High School. And the appealing part, and this is the nice part about being in a high school, is that these students can engage with these questions at a very sophisticated level. And so we're continuing to support that group. In the past, they've gone out to Sutton High School, where the principal is noted as sort of being a leader in this area. I'm going to be able to partner with him through the district as well. And we want to continue the growth of that group so that they can be leaders on these issues in our building.
Is that it? Okay. Comments or questions from the committee? Ms. Dolan, please.
As a soon-to-be lame duck, I feel like I have to take the chance to say how much I love the Credit for Life Fair, and I'm thrilled that it's coming back and that it'll be for all the 12th graders. Of course, I think it would be even better if it could be extended to 11th grade and of course, get kids thinking about those skills. I also think it's fabulous that you're talking about doing a fair around the trades, because I think that's a very potentially lucrative and enjoyable career for people. As someone who is married to someone who went to trade school versus the college path, I think that's a great option to put in front of kids, where
there's going to be a lot of jobs available as well. So I'm really excited that you guys are doing that too. So thanks for all that everybody's doing for these school improvement plans.
Yeah, and Mr. Lee and Mayor Kokoris were nice enough to sort of put us in touch with the folks who, have done this before. And that's the great part, because, we can say we want to do a career fair in this area, but actually knowing who to speak to, we'd be just cold calling, but instead being able to tap into resources where, we've done this at high school X, we've done this at high school Y, we've done this at high school Z. You let us know when we're going to come in. So we're meeting next week to talk about the specific plans, and that'll take place in the next several weeks.
Thank you very much, Dr. Scully. I'm very excited to hear all these new things coming about, especially DECA, because I went to a high school that had that, and they ran a store. So I was just wondering what kind of projects you think DECA might do at Braintree High School.
Well, we have a store, we have a cafe that runs through the special services department, and I think I think they do very well both by the school and and to those students involved. I think when we start, what we're looking to do first is A, just get students interested in the material. Then also B, I think for starters, we'll take a look at the various different conferences and competitions that they have, so that students can learn with an eye towards having a chance to actually practice that. Eventually, I would like to see some programs at Braintree High that allow students to develop more of a career focus. I think I'll just say for many of us who went to school some years ago, there was an artificial divide between I'm going to do academic classes or I'm going to do vocational classes. And that's really a thing of the past. If you visit schools, if you talk to folks, some of the programs that are available are, literally cutting edge. And there's a lot of opportunity that I think combines an interest in further training with a career focus. So that's a broad picture, but in terms of DECA, our first goal would be get it off the ground, develop some interest, and then hopefully see how we can, as with all the areas at a high school, sort of how can we find out, how can we match up with other schools that are doing something similar and sort of hear from them. And I find that's often a good way to get students even more interested when they say, wow, this is what they were able to do. We can do that. And I know that we can. So that's the hope.
That's great. Okay, thank you.
Cyrus, did you have anything? Okay. Anyone else? Please, but Mr. Chief.
Doctor, we had a program, a DECA program at the high school back when I was there. Like Kelly was saying, they ran the store. It was a great program, but it went when everything else went. Back to your broadcasting thing.
Yes.
Yeah. Is that going to be on the television?
So,
or is that a B cam or?
That's they have. Somebody sworn to me can tell me how to access it all the time, but just about all of the programs, productions, for lack of a better term, end up on their YouTube channel. So you can track down just about everything that Mr. Nelson, the broadcasting program, create. I don't know about the timing of it, whether it runs live or shortly thereafter, but you can find. So a lot of times there's human interest stories, there's interviews with staff members, with students. There's a lot of interesting stuff. They also still have the podcast. You can go out, you can subscribe to the podcast, and it shows up every couple of weeks. Those of us who are driving into work, it sort of comes up and like, wow, that's great. But like I'm at the school, I had no idea. They did a great podcast on Ms. Hurley just a couple of weeks ago, and it's terrific. So yes, those are virtually everything they make is available.
So where would the average person find that? It's not in the school system itself.
Go on YouTube and look for WAMP TV. You can track it down. Yes.
Thank you.
Any other comments or questions? I got a few comments. First of all, we know that, we're still dealing with, the ripples when we threw COVID out there and, what we've been dealing with. And we're seeing, how we're going to address some of the shortcomings when it comes to our individual students. the fact that we're going to try and seek them out and is the best we possibly can and get them the services they need and bring them back, and the greater community too. But but I see optimism too. DECA, some of the other things, the engineering chapters and whatnot, where yes, we're going to try and deal with what we've been dealing with and come out of it. But we're also, I see the optimism on the faces of the teachers and the principals and whatnot as to, yeah, this is how we're going to move forward. And at every level, I'm seeing new programs that, yes, we might have put them on pause, but we didn't negate them totally. So they're going to come back, and some of the other things that are ready to go. And it's going to be an exciting time to see these new programs queued up and put forward and in a way that will be beneficial to the students of Braintree. For that, I thank you all very much for your presentations.
We have one more, Jim and Devin.
Oh,
you're not done yet, sir. Settle down.
Oh, wow. I thought that was, the mental health screening. That's an important measure. Yes.
Hold on 1 second.
We're with you.
There we go. Miller.
All right. Thank you, Mr. Lee, Chairman Devon. So I am just going to take a moment to highlight the department improvement plan. So in addition to our elementary school, our middle school, and our high school plan, we also have all of our curriculum directors who put together individual department plans. They follow the same format as the school plans that you just saw, focusing on those 4 different goal areas of curriculum instruction, family engagement, learning and innovation, and then our wellness. So rather than pull up all of the individual departments and go through in the same format that our principals just went through, I tried to go through the plans and just highlight 1 to 2 things that I wanted to celebrate for you this evening. So I thank the directors for putting together those plans and for the directors celebrating the great work that their teachers are doing. And as you can imagine, as the school improvement plans are being written, the department improvement plans are also simultaneously feeding into all of those. So it was certainly a collaborative effort. So you might see some overlap here as well. So I'll start with art and design. So art and design is really focusing on refining some of their units of study to really bring out that creativity. The music department is really focusing on making sure they're getting their message out there, informing the community about all of their seasonal concerts and their community performances. I will quickly highlight the fact that we had our first back in-person performance at Braintree High School last week. So we're super excited that we had the orchestra performing live for people sitting in the audience. So that was really exciting. Our world language department is really focusing on professional development for the teachers on grading proficiency-based authentic tasks. So we've talked a number of times through the different school plans about really making sure that it's the students that are diving into the work. And so the world language department is also celebrating that through the use of authentic tasks. So something coming from the actual countries themselves. In our social studies department, they are really focusing on student-led civics projects. So that is showcased in grades 8 through 12. We are continuing and bringing back all of our great programs, such as the Veterans Guest Keynote Speaker Program, which will actually be happening next week. So we are excited to welcome the veterans back into our schools in person to do some presentations in our social studies department. We also have a number of other programs that happen throughout the school year, including the Braintree Townwide Field Trip for our 3rd graders, celebrating all the history in Braintree. And also emphasizing character education in our kindergarten program by celebrating a character trait of the month. So that's a really fun program that the students like to get into. For our English and reading department, or our ELA department, they are focusing on research, sharing, and implementing strategies to meet the needs of all learners. So I think that's another great theme that we've been celebrating tonight, really meeting students where they are, making sure that every student is finding success where they are in that big span of readiness for the curriculum. Designing and implementing units that are both diverse and inclusive. So again, making our students feel welcome, making the families feel welcome, because we are celebrating all of those great cultures in our classrooms. And community engagement through literacy events at all of the elementary schools and MSKC. I'll say that we have a great event happening over at Morrison this Friday afternoon, which is a combination of a PTO event, a Title I sponsored event, and through that they'll really be celebrating some literacy as well. If we can go to the next slide. In our math department, I know we've highlighted a couple of these things, but supporting the implementation of low floor, high ceiling tasks. So that really just means making sure that we have tasks that all students are ready for. So low floor, it can be scaffolded down to meet the needs of all learners, or brought up to the enrichment level. So that's where you have low floor versus high ceiling, but it is the same task that everybody is working on. In our science department, we're facilitating professional development to scaffold in the moment to meet the needs of students, and also using a conceptual modeling pedagogy. So it feels like different terminology by department, really just meaning that we want hands-on learning that meets the needs of everybody. In our ELE department, we are celebrating some new programs happening at the high school. So specifically science, social studies, and the English departments have been collaborating with the ELE teachers to design and develop content-based SEI, so that's Sheltered English Immersion, and ELD courses for our students, just to make sure that our EL population is finding success in our academics, and also establishing and developing the district's English Learner Parent Advisory Council. So we often talk about the CPAC, which is supporting our special education families, and this one is specifically celebrating our English learners that are here in Braintree. For the guidance department, we have professional development and further utilization of virtual learning and dual enrollment opportunities. So I would put this into the category of another big success and a positive thing that we've taken out from the pandemic, with more opportunities for students to access some virtual learning through partnerships with neighboring districts or with institutions of higher ed, which, as you can imagine, makes it a lot more feasible when we're doing it remotely, because the students can stay in Braintree and then access that great material. Also enhancing counselor and staff communication for our at-risk students, and counseling and administrators are collaborating on student support for the referral process. So this is really going back to that theme of making sure there's an open dialogue between the school district and the families of students who we are seeing struggling more from different experiences that they've gone through with the pandemic. In our health and wellness department, we are continuing our Braintree Alliance for Safe and Healthy Youth through our BASHI program. I will mention that last week we had a great presentation from Cindy Pierce that was talking about helping your kids navigate their social lives, both online and offline. So we are really thankful that that BASHI group is providing different programs for families in Braintree to come and access. And in the health and wellness department, we're also working with teachers to provide social and emotional learning strategies in the classroom. Our nursing department is collaborating with teachers to constantly review those protocols and procedures. And we are often talking to our nursing department over the past year and a half. We know that they're working really hard, and we celebrate all of their work. And then finally, in our special services department, we are focusing actually tomorrow through our professional development day on vertical teaming among the staff to make sure that we have smooth transitions for our students from the elementary programs to middle and from middle to high. So tomorrow, with schools being closed and having it be a full professional development day for teachers, it really allows that vertical teaming to happen because we're all on one schedule. We don't have to wait for different students to be dismissed. So I know every department is really capitalizing on that work, including our special services team. They continue to collaborate with our CPAC. And I know we've mentioned a couple of times tonight about that district curriculum accommodation plan, just really being a tool that has been around. And we've had this document that's really highlighting ways to support students prior to that special ed referral. But it's certainly a document that we are, in light of what our students are going through, making sure that we're making it accessible and user-friendly for all of our teachers. And then finally, I did also want to highlight our partnership this year with the Massachusetts Partnership for Youth. So they are an organization that provide training for teachers specifically in the areas of social emotional learning or trauma-informed education. So throughout the year with our partnership, we have a number of webinars that teachers can participate in live or watch the recording. And we're celebrating teachers by giving them professional development points for going through those webinars. So I'd be happy to answer any questions that I can.
Comments, questions?
Thank you, Ms. Miller. I was able to attend this Cindy Pierce presentation and she was phenomenal. So I think that was really great. Hope she comes back again. And I think it would be great to have her talk to the students as well. So thank you.
Any other comments, questions?
Just to wrap it up,
Yes.
I mean, coming back into the school year has been a really interesting combination of trying to get things back to normal while dealing with the aftermath of COVID. And the principals who are here tonight and the directors who have worked on these plans and all the teaching staff have been incredibly challenged all year long, because in our effort to get back to normal, we're trying to overcome a lot of obstacles and impediments that are a result of the pandemic. So when you hear about all the emotional supports that are being offered to students, when you hear about trails, when you hear about the mental health screener, that's a huge component of what we need to do this year if becoming more normal and moving forward with these initiatives is going to become possible. So I applaud all the principals and all the directors for their efforts. It's been yeoman's work across the board, our teaching staff and our nursing staff, which I'll get into shortly, because it is overcoming those obstacles in that effort to become more normal that has really been the key to this year thus far. And when I say that students are struggling to make that transition back, they certainly are. But I think we're wearing them out. And I think we're getting back to a place where all these initiatives become more realistic and moving forward becomes more possible for the benefit of everybody in the district. So again, I thank all the people who've worked on it.
Thank you.
Thank you very much. Yeah, at the least. Moving on, any administrative updates?
Well, I'm going to hit, if you don't mind, first, Mr. Devon,
By all means.
mental health screeners.
Thank you,
everybody.
Thank you.
Work to do tomorrow. As was mentioned on a couple of occasions during this presentation, we have begun delivering the mental health screener to various grade levels throughout the district. I just wanted to give you an overview of where we stand. As you can see, the fourth grade, their screener involved, I'm going to screw up all the acronyms, but, a subtest on anxiety, depression, post-traumatic stress disorder. Seventh grade was a more traditional measure. We trained the staff that was going to implement this mental health screener prior to implementation. We sent passive consent forms home to families who could opt out if this is not something they did not want to participate in. We had the students complete the assessments. The assessments were done on computers in a very user-friendly way, if you will, for lack of a better way of saying it. While they were taking those assessments, we had clinical staff on site monitoring the results as we were looking for kids who really flagged as something self-harm indicative or something along those lines. But we had people ready to go with that to be the case. Any student who endorsed a self-harm item met with a school psychologist or a guidance counselor to determine what interventions were necessary. And obviously, families would be notified and weren't notified anytime something immediate had to be done. In terms of other things that were highlighted through the screeners, our staff went over options with families about what they might want to see given the results of the test. So again, non-threatening, but if we saw something that we were worried about, we reached out to families, had those conversations about the resources that might be available to them, should they wish to do it. In terms of outcomes, as of this day, we had nobody sent to crisis, which is a huge thing for us. We're very happy about all that. That was probably our biggest concern. Again, we were ready for it, but it never came to pass. We had no kids that flagged that way. Data from students that reported elevated anxiety, depression, or PTSD symptoms were again moved on to supports that were appropriate. And we have supports within our classrooms, both on the tier 1 level and tier 2 level, to provide requisite support for those kids as they work through the issues that they have. Some just raw numbers for you to see. And this is ongoing, so these numbers will increase over time. But we've done 4 elementary schools in the 4th grade. 229 students have been screened. You can see the number of students reporting anxiety symptoms was 13, depression 13, PTSD 20. I'm going to get to that in a second. You can see a percentage of the population, right around 6%, closer to 9% on PTSD. Kids who indicated PTSD symptoms were examined, and a lot of times what they were reporting were not really elements of trauma, but they highlighted it on their assessment. So we met with them individually to find out exactly what they were talking about. So that number is probably elevated. In the middle school, for the most part, South at this point has been done in the 7th grade. 160 kids were screened. Again, you can see the numbers for anxiety was only 5, depression 10, PTSD 10. Anxiety 3% of the population, depression and PTSD around 6%. And again, with all those students were followed up on with our staff to make sure that they were in a good place. So this work will continue. So again, this is district-wide at this moment. We're screening close to 400 kids. We're running around somewhere between 4 and 7% of somebody, being highlighted as either anxiety, depression, or PTSD. Our staffing has been more than adequate to deal with the issues that have come forward at this point. Again, we're ready for a crisis should one present itself, but we've been fortunate enough that that has not been the case. And we hope to get most of this work done between now and probably the beginning of December to get a really good baseline about where our students are. So I just wanted to bring that to you in terms of where we are in this process. Happy to answer any questions you might have about it.
To the chair.
Questions, please, Ms. Harris.
Thank you, Mr. Lay. Just kind of looking at that 4th and 7th grade, are we moving it to the broader, like the high school, the younger kids? Are we going to do all the grades? What are we?
We at this point don't plan to do all the grades just because of the time it would take to do it all. It is rather labor intensive in the sense that we have to have personnel on site while we're doing it, obviously. But we will move it up into the high school. And then based on our resources and the time, that we have remaining in the year, we'll try to increase the number of grades that we've been seeing.
Okay, thank you.
Through the chair, I was going to ask a similar question as Ms. Saros, like why 4th grade and why 7th grade, and can we do something at the high school level? And also, I know you said people can opt out of it, and then therefore we might not be reaching as many people as we need to. So maybe is this a privacy concern for parents? Like, what are we doing with the data? And maybe trying to encourage people, to have it done and knowing that the data is not going to be shared, or is it shared? So what are we doing with that data? Is it staying internally?
It's all internal. It allows us to take a look at what resources do we need to bring to bear, right? And as we've heard about Gosnell and some other things that we're doing, trails is another example.
Right.
With the baseline later on, we can reassess to see what kind of progress we've made. More importantly for us, it really helps us kind of target kids who really are struggling, right? And make sure that they're getting the proper support that they need at this moment.
Right.
So in terms of distributing it beyond us, that's never the intent. Our intent is to make sure that we're giving the requisite support every child needs to be successful and to come back into that environment in a comfortable and supported way. It cannot be understated the condition that some of our students have returned to school. It's been a real challenge for a lot of our families and a lot of our students. So making sure that we have the right support, again, not to go back to this improvement plan, the only way that's possible is if this is done correctly. And so that's our intent.
Thank you.
Okay. Ms. Dolan, please.
You had mentioned a baseline being established now. Does that mean that subsequent screenings will be done towards the end of the school year? Will it be the same one, or like how does that play out?
Our intent is to do them later in the year to see where we stand. I can't tell you it'll be the exact same test. It's beyond my knowledge base, but we do intend to return to it to see how well we're doing.
Okay. Thank you.
Any other comments or questions? Hearing none. Thank you very much. Greatly appreciate it. I think it's important that we have this data. Like anything, if we have one child that's suffering, it's one too many. But to reach out and get this data, maybe at some point in time, it's useful going forward so that we do follow along with this. It's all about follow up on something like this. So thank you very much. I appreciate it.
My pleasure.
Moving on to administrative updates.
So administrative updates, I only have a couple. One is just an update. I believe everybody here is aware that about a week ago, the Commissioner of Education extended the mask mandate to January 15th. They still have left in place the 80% threshold for an individual building. I thought I'd just update you. As we've discussed previously, the only building in the district that could conceivably reach that figure is the high school. As of today, we would need, the total population of high school is 2,030. Again, every person in the high school counts in this particular map. To reach 80%, we need 1,624. As of right now, we are 1,302. So we are still shy of that 80% mark. We will continue to monitor it and to see where we stand. Should we reach that threshold, I would return to the committee to see what your pleasure would be. But we are not in a position to apply for a waiver regardless. So that's where we stand in terms of that. Just some other COVID-related information to give to you, just again, for your own edification. As of this date today, we've only had 69 positive cases within the district. We've had 314 students participate in test and stay. So that 314 kids represents 1,528 tests that our nursing staff, and it's been our nursing staff, have given. And as of this date, we've had no in-school transmissions. So those students have been allowed to stay in school. Those students have been allowed to stay in classes. I emphasize this because you don't have to look around too far to see neighborhoods that are not doing test and stay, whose kids would have been home for those days. Our students are in school. And so it's a testimony to our nursing staff and a very positive development for us. The other administrative update I have, Mr. Devon, is on Friday at Morrison Elementary School at 4 o'clock. There is a grand opening of their outdoor classroom made possible through the town's Community Preservation Committee. It's been a number of years in the making, but it's finally finished. So if you are free on Friday afternoon at 4, there's a grand opening to be had. So,
Excellent. Thank you very much. From the school committee, on A, we have school committee student representative updates. You guys have the floor.
Yeah, so one thing I wanted to highlight was we are ending our first normal fall sports season. And we had a lot of great wins. We did really well. And I think I just noticed overall in the student body, just a lifted spirits, which we didn't have last year because obviously we didn't have a normal any sports season. And I'm excited to see, I play 2 sports. I play winter track and spring track. And I'm excited to see how that will turn out. And I'm just glad that it's normal, and I think it's going to be a good year for that.
Great to hear.
And to jump off of what you just said, we were talking about the DESE commissioner extending the mask mandate, and I think there was a mixed emotions in the high school when that was announced. But I think we're all kind of okay with it for right now, with like the people that aren't vaccinated and the people that are vaccinated. And you have the stats, right?
Yeah, we were planning on talking about that exact topic regarding the extension of the mask mandate to January 15th. But generally in the high school, Jack talked about the sports and how we're coming to a close with our first season regarding clubs and other extracurricular activities. We're truly really transitioning back into a sense of normalcy at the high school. I know for a fact personally, student council elections have just been held. We're going to be transitioning to our normal setting for the rest of the year, and other clubs are kind of getting together and planning out their true plans for this school year.
Excellent. Great to hear. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Next, we have the Braintree High School update from Mayor Kokoris.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I just wanted to give you guys an update as to where we are. Obviously, in the last meeting, if folks weren't here to basically hear my entire report, I just want to reiterate that we've replaced over 250 fixture supply lines and valves. We have ongoing, that's been completed. We have ongoing, the main plumbing control valves to each building zone are being addressed. And we've completed a valve abatement that will be taking care of any type of contamination, et cetera, abating that. Also completed control valves from buildings identified as B, C, D, and E, and half of A have been addressed. And we have additional shutdown of school water supply will be required to complete this work, and additional work, repair work of existing pipeline will need to be corrected at that time. So those will all be done off hours and not affecting activity during the school day, et cetera. Phase 3 is ongoing. So I don't know if everyone's aware, but we did have a problem in one of the chemistry, a lab room is what we had the first Friday that we got back to school, where there was a break in a gooseneck faucet, which caused a little bit of disruption and some water issues. So in addressing that, our facilities department is taking a look at making sure that we have shutoffs. There weren't any at the time. And so the chemistry and physics labs in A building are scheduled to have new valve installations and completed this week. Science labs in B through C buildings have been abated and will be scheduled for new valves and access panels to be installed later this week, and the work should be completed by November 18th. Also, so that, I mean, that's important because those are areas that, I mean, we have some of these faucets that, you know, literally are rotting through, and now we'll have panel access and ability for anyone to shut off that particular line if necessary. In addition, completed, got a lot of complaints about, as you went into the rear entry, there was a lot of moisture issues there. So facilities team took a look at windows, making sure the windows were sealed properly, the roofs as you went into the teacher's entrance or the back entrance of the building. And they have damp-proofed those particular walls and painted and the vestibule lighting issues have been addressed. So if you ever came in the back of the school, the wall was just, you know, the paint was peeled off. It looked like, it looked terrible. So, you know, and in the end, they were able to address it and seal it and paint it. So take a look at it if you get a chance, and you'll see the improvements that were done there. In addition, you know, going back to the girls' locker room, so the drain was actually just clogged, and you know the recommendation is to eliminate the paper towel dispensers and put in you know, a different type of hand drying unit because that was the root of the problem. And I don't know if it was some sort of TikTok video that kids were told to do all this stuff, and some kids did. I don't know, but there was a lot of paper towels that don't belong in the toilet. So that's a way of addressing it in the future. But fortunately, our water sewer department and facilities were able to take care of that. There was also a kitchen drainage blockage, and that's been completed. And once again, our Braintree Water and Sewer Department and Facilities Department were able to fix that issue. And lastly, what originally got our Facilities Department in there and got me to go to school every day was the electrical switchgear. And right now we are receiving pricing for the switchgear, working with staff on that. And a meeting has been scheduled to review the installation process and the final costs. And the town has also received some cost estimates to add electrical room doors to bring it up to code. And this will all take place after the switchgear has been installed. And the beauty of the switchgear being replaced is that it will be new, not 50 plus years old. And it's really the core of all the electricity that comes to the building. Without it, you don't have any electricity. So those are just some of the things that our facility staff is working on, continue to work on. And, you know, they've accomplished quite a bit in a short period of time while maintaining the regular day-to-day town facilities issues as well. So I just want to thank them for their hard work, and we will continue to do that work, and working with Mr. Lee and Chairman Devon to make sure it gets accomplished, as well as Mr. Cronin. So there's a lot more work to be done, but at least if we continue down this path, we're going in the right direction, and we'll be able to eliminate some of the major catastrophes that are just waiting to happen if we don't address it. So thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Greatly appreciate it. Thank the ladies and gentlemen that were working with facilities and helping us, and all of the people that are involved and trying to, shall we say, straighten out things that have been, a problem for decades. Moving on to our Policy and Education Subcommittee that is chaired. Please go forward. You have a lot on your plate tonight, Ms. Dolan.
I do, but, and my apologies, I just noticed that the policies that we talked about in our last meeting are not in the packet. I'm sorry if I was supposed to ask for them to be included.
They were put out in a second email today.
Oh, they were?
David one.
Okay, sorry about that. I didn't see the update. Okay, perfect. I'm going to refer to the Policy and Education Subcommittee binder then that we had for our individual meeting to do that. So the first thing that we talked about is our draft school year calendar for 22-23.
So in your packet, the revised packet that was sent out, you can see a draft copy of the school calendar for next year. Next year's calendar falls in a much more traditional manner than the present year does. So as you look through it, you can see that we start almost immediately after Labor Day. Most of the holiday season falls where it normally does in terms of no special consideration about what we might want to move around. So the one date that is new to the calendar, if you will, is in June 19th, which would not fall during the normal school year unless we had a number of snow days. Would then involve June 19th, which has become a federal holiday. As we enter into school year, we need to be cognizant of that. But it would only come into play were we to have enough snow days to get us to that particular date. Otherwise, the school year would end before it, at which point it would only affect full year employees. But it's for your consideration and happy to answer any questions about it. But again, it's a much more straightforward calendar than the one that we dealt with this year.
Any other comments or questions from the committee on this calendar? Okay. Weren't we going to put out some type of a, getting some feedback from people as far as maybe changing vacations going forward some years?
Yes, we will be putting out a survey.
A survey.
The Policy Subcommittee has discussed wanting to take a look at the potential of moving away from a February and April vacation and having a March vacation. The timing would not allow it to occur for next year.
Sure.
However, we will be coming out with a survey to solicit people's opinions about such an idea to see whether or not it's worth pursuing.
Excellent. Thank you.
It's worthy to point out that it truly is a survey. We're not in one direction or another.
Exactly.
We're aware that this could be a controversial topic for many people.
Information seeking.
Yes.
And so we're just looking to get opinions from the community to see what people think. So no ulterior motives, no plans, truly just a survey.
Thank you for that clarification.
Sure.
Greatly appreciate it.
I think that was worthwhile.
Yes.
Some of the other items that we talked about that are included in the packet that I missed are a number of boilerplate policies, as we've been calling them, that come from the MASC. We felt, although two of us on the policy subcommittee are ending our term soon, and of course the subcommittee would be reconfigured anyways, we still wanted to put forth for consideration a few of these sort of quote unquote non-controversial policies as we see them. So they are included for a first reading. They include curriculum adoption, curriculum development, school day, emergency closings, and school volunteers, as well as community use of school facilities. So, and one more, observance of religious holy days. All of these, again, are either from our boilerplate packet from the MASC models that are provided, and includes one that was modified that we may want to talk about. But we're happy to answer any questions on those, again, provided for a first reading. And if the committee so deems at the next meeting that you want to postpone their adoption until the new committee is seated, then that's fine too. But, again, we wanted to continue our work and push things forward while we are still in effect.
Is that your complete report?
That's my wrap.
Excellent. Thank you very much. I think it's important that as we go from one school committee to the next, we pass batons to people rather than dropping them off. I believe that, there's a potential to have 3 new people sitting on this committee, and it's going to help to get them up to speed as to how we do things, our process, our procedures, so that on day one, they can hit the ground running. And it's this type of, shall we say, passing of the baton, I think that's going to make that easier. Okay, moving on to Mr. Kokoris, are you with us?
Yes, sir.
You have your Finance and Operations Subcommittee update for us?
Thank you, sir.
Okay, you have the floor, sir.
So the Finance and Operations Subcommittee met this past Thursday, and we went through a number of things. The first is the student activity accounts, and Mr. Lee, I believe, included those in your packets. We need to approve these clubs and activity accounts. So I don't know if there's any questions, but I know that we did have a full list for each school. And if anyone has any questions, we'd be happy to answer those.
Any comments or questions from the school committee? Obviously, this is part of us, shall we say, moving forward with student activities and whatnot at our middle schools and our high school. Mr. Lee, do you have anything to add on this?
No, I mean, on the spreadsheet that you've received, you can see the listing of the clubs and activities. On the right, you'll see whether or not they require a student activity account. But it is the purview of the school committee to approve both the clubs themselves and the use of these accounts. So again, not to reiterate, but I'm happy to answer any questions, but I would seek your approval.
I guess we're looking for a motion to move forward.
This will be the first reading, correct?
Well, of course it is. Excuse me. It is. So these will be digesting over the, do we have to get it on tonight? I mean, will it hold?
If they want to use the accounts between now and the next meeting, they should.
Right. So the next meeting is in early December. If the desire of the committee, we can certainly wait for that, but the use of accounts.
Does anyone have a problem with the same night action?
No.
I do.
Yeah.
Oh, there's one person, and if one person objects to that, it'll go first and second reading. At our next meeting, which is when, December 4th?
6th.
December 6th, and the
Yep.
subcommittee will be meeting on the 2nd.
Right.
So,
Okay.
And how will that impact the clubs between now and then, in a literal sense?
We'll work around it. We'll find a legal way to make sure that they can, expend it. Most clubs aren't going to expend money till later in the year anyway, so it would be money coming in point in the school year typically. But we'll work with the clubs.
Okay, thank you.
Ms. Cobbler, now.
Field trips?
I was just gonna ask if this impacts the clubs at all?
No, the field trips would be a pass-through. Right.
They generally still collect and go in here and out unless they're paying directly to a company to set up the trip for them.
I mean, are we holding up the kids from?
We're not going to hold up the kids, so we'll take it offline. We'll work through it.
Okay, thank you.
Okay.
Mr. Chief, what's your objection? Because it's just.
Excuse me.
Right?
Excuse me. No. If one person has a problem with some not action,
No, I'm just.
it's within your right to any of our rights to say, I'm not comfortable with the first night reading. And that's that's about as far as it goes. It's in a.
You should know something. I didn't know.
No, okay, I can appreciate it, but I believe it,
Thank you.
All right, thank you. All right, anything else, Mr. Kokoris, in your?
Yes,
report?
Mr. Chair, we had a couple of other things on our agenda. One was a survey on the Sr3 funds. We had 512 responses. Now, just as a reminder to the committee, the Sr3 funds were used for the fiscal year 2022 budget, but we're happy to report that in the survey responses, the way that we appropriated those funds matched very closely to the responses that came back and the community's wishes as far as how we would spend those funds. So, Mr. Lee, I don't know if you want to go into any other detail, but that's kind of a high-level overview of our discussion.
Mr. Kokoris, I think you captured it. We will post the survey results up on our website so people can take a look at it. We, as we went through the budget conversations last year, had earmarked what we do to leave the funds from Sr3 to maintain the operating budget for this year. We actually applied for Sr3 money in October and were approved for the expenses that we identified. But as you stated, it matches up very closely with the results of the survey. So thank you.
Thank you. And then the last piece of our discussion was the preliminary discussion of the fiscal year 2022 budget. And really the highlight is that just a reminder that we did include this ESSER 3 money in the budget to get to our number of 74,683, 280. So we understand that as we start the discussions, and that will probably start in earnest after the new school committee is seated, the new members are seated, that we do have that piece to make up as far as what we will have in the budget as a starting point. So we just, we know there are things that are being worked on to fill that gap. And we would just say, we would just remind the committee that we need to be diligent this year as well to find whatever savings we can to make sure that we don't have a tremendous gap going into 2023. So I don't know if there are any other questions. As I said, our next meeting will be December 2nd at 5:30 prior to the December 6th school committee meeting.
Any comments or questions from the committee? None. A few things. I think it's very important that people realize that, that ESSER money did help, shall we say, prop us up last year. And going forward, we're not going to have that. I think it sets us up for a budgetary season in which we're going to have to look everywhere, just like last year, and negotiate and talk and see where we can, where we might be able to nip and tuck to try and go forward. I do appreciate all the numbers we saw for ESSER, how we spent that money, and that it did line up with how people wanted us to spend that money. So that's a plus. We know that we're going to have that survey information on our website. Are we going to have the expenditures too?
I can put both up. Yep.
I think it's important that people realize they should be able to do their own math. Look, here's what we spent it on, so that it is the people's money. So I think it's important that we put that forward. So moving on to public comment. Is there anyone here that wants to make a public comment?
Through the chair, if I may.
Oh, by all means. Excuse me.
Sorry. Tomorrow is election day.
Yes.
And I'd like to take a minute to thank those that are running for town council and especially school committee. It's definitely been extremely challenging, and I have been experienced the last 2 years. I want to remind everyone to vote and make your voice heard. It is critical that you understand who is running and why they are running. Learning about your candidates will help you decide the future of Braintree schools. We must keep looking forward and making the district the best we can. Thank you.
Excellent. Thank you very much for that. Ms. Dolan.
Along the same lines, I'd like to repeat something that I've said often, which is I believe that 80% of life is showing up. So I'd like to acknowledge that Kathy Tuffy, school committee candidate, is here in the audience. And I did get a personal RSVP from Lisa Heger that she was delayed due to work and could not be here. So I do appreciate the participation of candidates in the public meetings to show that, you are ready for taking on this challenge. So thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Dolan. Moving forward, any public comment? I don't think we have that. Okay, we don't have anyone for public comment, so I'll entertain a motion to adjourn. Second. Okay. Roll call vote. Mr. Mayor.
Aye.
Ms. Saros.
Aye.
Ms. Cobb-Lemaire.
Aye.
Ms. Dolan.
Aye.
Mr. Kokoris.
Aye.
Mr. Chave.
Aye.
The chair votes aye. We are now adjourned.